Well, good evening. Thank you for coming. It's good to see each of you and to fellowship together, eat together, hear stories of what is happening around the world. Tonight, even as we're here, we know the world that we live in is faced with all kinds of challenges. But we have to ask ourselves, are we going to be shaped by the stories of destruction in the world, or are we going to be shaped by a better story? As Christians, we believe that there is a better story. And for those who are following Jesus and Bible readers, that better story is very clearly articulated in Genesis chapter 1, verse 31. Right from the beginning, that story, that God looked at everything God had created, and behold, it was good. The goodness of creation, the excellence that was there, it was wonderful. Shalom. When I first came to America, I heard people talk about a movie called Lion King, and they were using this one, Hakuna Matata. That sounds like Swahili to me. Where did that come from? So I told my American friends that Lion King did not invent that. That is philosophy of wellness, shalom, goodness. And we can choose to have that story shape how we engage the world, how we show up, or we can choose the stories of destruction. Human beings are story-formed people. We are shaped by stories. Stories of our families, stories of our communities, stories of our churches, and even more importantly, stories that we choose to say or to tell ourselves about ourselves. And some of those stories are good, and some of them are not so good. And sometimes we choose stories that we don't want to tell to be the stories that form and shape us. But how we show up will tell us what story is shaping us. And so that's where I want to start. At Center for Serving Leadership, we choose a story that shapes who we are and how we show up. And that story is in our vision. We envision a thriving world, a world in which serving is the trademark of leadership. I was telling people at our table that a year ago or 2 years ago, we had about 8 leaders from around the world. And John and I were doing training virtually. And we asked them to describe to us what the trademark of leadership is in their respective countries. Not one of them, including the United States, not one of them told us that serving is the trademark of leadership. People could tell us a lot of things that are considered trademarks of leadership, but serving was not one of them. We have chosen that to be the trademark of leadership, and because we have seen it at work. So a very quick biography here, how I came to this work, because I'm a user of the serving leader model. I was pastoring a church down in Maryland called Capital Christian Fellowship, a minority church with people from 45 different nationalities, a very lively place. We had, like we used to say, we had the right of the right and the left of the left, whatever it is, or political wings, and we were living 12 miles from Washington, D.C., from the White House. So guess what happened? Every 2 years and 4 year cycle in our congregation was a lively place because elections and all those things. And how do we thrive as a community? And so we, again, chose a vision. Love God, love people, and make disciples. And so we focused on that. And so it was a lively place. But then I was called from that place to another place. Now, this is a small congregation, 375 people from 45 countries, about a $500,000 budget. I jumped from there to Lancaster to run an organization with a team with 240 workers globally, about 50 or so here in Lancaster, and to work with Jerry Keener, who's looking at me there. And we came there, and I was in an interesting reality because I came to this organization at a time where people's way of thinking about mission had changed, the way they were engaging changed, budgets were low, 25% of our staff had been just laid off. It's an interesting time. And, by the way, did I say that I was the first non-Swiss German president? And 39 years old? And was the youngest and the second youngest in the leadership team. So I had all these people. Was a crisis moment for me, personally. I had my number 2 guy, a senior in age and experience and all that. So I was just trying to figure out, how do we do this thing? That was 2011. 2013, I met John because our conference, Lancaster Conference, had invited him and Atlantic Coast Conference to resource the organizations and pastors and try to figure out how to do leadership. And we met at a place called Black Rock. A number of you know where that is, in Quarryville. And when John brought the serving leader model, the framework that you see there, all of a sudden, I found a way. I felt, yes, this is a model that will help us as an organization to get clear about our vision, to get clear about our values, to get clear about the mission, what we're going to do, why are we here, how are we going to behave, what are we doing? Is everybody in the right position that they're supposed to be in? Do they have the skills that they need to have? And do they love and have passion about what their work is? Do we do that? And then how do we delegate properly and give responsibility and authority? Yes, I found the serving leader, and that changed the practice of leadership as I understood it. By the way, I grew up in Africa. I grew up in Kenya, and I saw leaders behave mostly badly, especially the village leaders, the chiefs. These guys were taking land from people, and it's just like the thing was for them. It wasn't there to serve other people, to serve the communities. It's just grab it, get it for yourself. So I had to learn so much, and as we were learning these things, I began to see that at the root, we know this, that at the root of all world problems, and this is not an exaggeration, at the root of all issues that we see in the challenges in the world, is leadership. Mainly poor leadership, bad leadership. So, tonight, I want to share with you what God has been teaching us and what we're learning from communities as we go with this leadership model that we believe is changing our communities. It's changing communities in Berlin, Ohio, here in Lancaster. It changed us. I believe Jerry can testify to this at EMM. This work changed us and helped us figure out how to do the work that we're doing in a different way with a team that is working together to achieve this. This is what I believe when John called me, invited me to go out, go learn. Okay, now that the world's shut down and I can't travel, what do we need to do? So we started to learn. We digitized the material, we developed different, and that continues to happen today as we're working together and creating the materials that we can teach and can train and can coach people, leaders globally. So now, what is the serving leader, what is the World Serving Leadership campaign that we're talking about here? The picture you see in front of you was taken in Indonesia last year. I was at a Bio college doing serving leadership training for 2 days in a workshop. I had a number of students around me, few professors, including one of the vice president of that college there now is in our serving leader model. I'm in cohorts that I'll tell you a little bit about here. So as I was there, we had this vision that we want to see this work go globally, especially to areas and communities where people can least afford it. Well, how do we do that as a small company? And we believe that God has brought so many people that have benefited from this framework that are interested and invested in seeing this work go around the world. So we had this little vision, $1 million and train 5,000 leaders. But as we started to do the work, as we started to go out, and I'm going to share a few stories here, what happened. As I was there in that place and seeing these kids and professors and seeing how they were connecting to the material, they were beginning, you could see the twinkle in their eyes. They were seeing the world in a different way. They were going to make a difference. And I felt that conviction. 5,000? The world is so big and the need is great. Isn't that such a really small vision? And so right there is where I had this interesting experience. I can't explain it. I just know that it happened. I didn't hear an audible voice. I didn't see blinking lights, but I did in some ways. There was this thing deep inside. 50,000 leaders, 5 years, $5 million. And it shocked me, okay? So that's how this emerged. 50,000 leaders trained. We're gonna do this in 5 years. We're gonna raise $5 million to invest in these communities to see them thriving. The world thrive as a thriving place. So I took that in obedience and shared with John and shared with the team. That was kind of a trepidation, you know. We were thinking about 1 million, now we're talking about 5 million. But we're talking about 50,000 serving leaders trained and equipped around the world. And so that's how this really took off. And I got 2 thumbs up. You remember what John said, you know, him and Melonica have been really hoping that this work can go globally. But how do we do that? So that's what shaped what we're going to be sharing with you this night. All right, so let's go. Why is this work important? John Wambura is a pastor from Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, and he was here in Lancaster last week. And so we had lunch together. But he had said this, you know, Africa's greatest challenge is not poverty. But I want to stop there and say, let us not think that there is no poverty. There is poverty, and I grew up in it. I understand it. I had a first front seat to it. I lived in the second largest slum of Nairobi. Yes, poverty, I have seen it. It's there. It continues to be there. It's not conflict. Huh? What do you mean? Conflict in Eastern Congo, for example. Last year, I was there. 2 million people have been killed in that region for the last 10 years. You don't hear about it. The place where I was last year, I cannot go now. Because right now, about 15 kilometers from where I was, there are refugee camps. And you'll see probably a picture of one of those. And so conflict, yes, there is conflict. Injustice, yes, a lot of it, and we know. But I believe Pastor Mbora was correct. At the root of all that is poor leadership. And you can say that anywhere in the world. So how do we address these issues? We can, I believe, address them by resourcing and training leaders that serve. Leaders that don't serve themselves, but they serve their communities. They give back to their communities and change the world. Now, so here's one of these trainings that we did in the DRC Congo, the place I just told you. We had a gathering, and in that gathering, this is how we work with our partners around the world. We're not doing this work on our own, but we're working with our partners around the world. And they put a group together for a 2-day training. And so we had in that gathering police officers, police captains, we had government ministers, we had heads of universities together in that training. And by the end of that day, just introducing the serving leader framework as a way of thinking about leadership. One of them, Dr. Masoka, said that those words, you know, this training is effective. It's really good. And basically continue to say that, you know, I wish we could train our cabinet, our national cabinet, and she added, even our president. If our president could go through this training, that's just one day of introducing a framework of thinking about leadership. And she said that. And so that's the picture of the lady on the left. The lady next to me is the minister for culture and social services. And you see there are the bishop right there. And when you hear somebody in that place of authority say words like that, But what I did in the Congo, I brought a book that has been written by the title King Leopold's Ghost. King Leopold was this Belgian king who went to the Congo. Congo, or the DRC, is the second largest African country. In that place, King Leopold completely introduced a different framework. And that framework consists of, at least how they think about leadership, is plunder, is violence, is greed. In fact, King Leopold said he owned the country. The very first time in the world where one leader claimed to own a country, personally. And so this book, King Leopold's Ghost, is a story that this guy is telling about what people have learned in Africa in terms of leadership. Now, one African theologian has said, when you see King Leopold, you see a script written about leadership. So now, when you have a script, you can put all kinds of different actors, and they will still play the same play, right? You just switch the actors out, and the play is the same. So King Leopold brings this Congolese frameworks of leadership. It's all about violence. It's about plunder. It's about greed. It's our time to eat, right? That's what I heard. When leaders get in position, they say it's our time to eat. And so that's the framework. So I said, this is a framework of leadership. Plunder, greed, and violence. And this is serving leader model that serves the community, that builds, creates value to others, and helps communities to grow. And that is the leadership framework. So that's what Dr. Masoka saw and said, I like this. I wish our president could sit through this training. This is another story. The guy in the gray that you see in the middle there attended a pastor's training the day before with about 150 pastors, and he was there in civilian clothes. I didn't know who he was. And he pulled me aside at the end of the training and he said, I don't think you know who I am. I said, no, I don't. And he said, well, let me tell you who I am. I am the Major General of the Army in this place. I heard about this training last week, that this training was going to take place. I wanted to come and check it out. So that's one day. And he says, I like it so much, tomorrow I'm going to bring a bunch of my guys. And the next day, this is what happened. So this Mennonite boy standing in front of all these military people. And you see, the guy right next to me, you can identify me in there. The guy next to me, in the corner there, is one of the special forces guys. You know, he has a different uniform. And you see all these people who came, they have badges over here that tells you their rank. They're not just petty officers. These are people with ranks that showed up for the training. They love the training. The Major General, really, he did say, I wish that you could come back and do training for all our military commanders. Serving leadership. Okay? Serving leadership. That's what we're training. And he loved it so much. I mean, they had questions. You know, there are a lot of questions on different things, but they loved it so much. Right now, you can't go there because the war is just terrible. But that's what's happening last year. Now, we did train people out of that already, and we're running some other training. Let me see if we can get. So this is another follow-up. This kind of more pastors. John and I did this training with these guys. Very interestingly, Congolese mainly speak French. And in the Eastern Congo, they speak Swahili. So, in this training, John and I are training in English. They have a translator in that room over there, translating into French and Swahili. And we ran 6 months like that. And sometimes there were people, when we were in training, you hear them on motorbikes, out riding because they have these cell phones, and people are just, it's like, okay, interesting. And roosters behind, but we're learning together. This is the area I was telling you. See, these are the refugee camps back there. They're building all of this. This guy in front We trained him. He just finished 6 months with us, training to be a serving leader. And he's out there with his people. Not only that, he told me, this is a week ago, that these refugees have come into their areas, and he has taken 15 children in his own home. This guy barely makes a living, but he brought them in his home. And so one of the things we're doing with the serving leaders is that we're training people to invite people to invest in their own growth and development. So instead of just coming to receive, we ask people, put something in there so that you can do the work and take it seriously. So he had collected about $70 worth from people who were being trained. Now $70 is a lot of money in Congo. And he was asking, how do we get this money to you? I said, what? Please use the funds to feed the children. And my company, our organization was very glad that I did that. And I'm grateful that I made that decision just like that. Because I was just moved by what I heard is happening in that area. All right, just a few more stories. This one, this story, I can't tell this story without being emotional. Because this is Uganda. This bishop in Uganda, they invited me to go do training for him. He's a Mennonite bishop. He's just planted about 30 congregations in Uganda. And none of them has had any kind of training. None. He just told me this. And so I went there, and he told his churches that this training was coming. So that pastor, this guy in the middle, he needed to ride a bus from his village, which is 12 hours, from his village all night to Kampala, where the training was going to be. He was passionate, he was desperate for training. But when he got to the bus station, they told him, sorry, all the seats are taken. We have no seat for you. But he's like, I am not gonna miss the training. He asked them, is it okay for me to stand in the bus? And they said, yes, you can. This guy is in his 60s, rode the bus all night, standing. By the way, these are not paved roads. Did I say that? For 12 hours. And he got there. And when I saw him, this guy was so smiling. I was wondering, what's going on? And then he told us that story. Of course, then I started to cry because I was like, what? You're still smiling? After that, 12 hours? Desperation. We need the training. We need the training. People are hungry for training. And this is what we're learning. These are the stories that we learn. So this is Burundi. It's the poorest nation in the world. John was there with a pastor, and they were doing the serving leader training. And as you can see, the guy there, that's the bishop. And next to him is the top general of Burundi, with the serving leader book in front of him. You see that book? This is the top general of the country, with the bishop there. And the governor came to open the meeting. And so here's the governor. And this is what the governor said: we must lead better than we're leading, and we must rid our nation of the scourge of corruption. Please help us learn how. Now, that's a shift. That's a shift. Because what we've heard many times is people blaming. It's somebody else's fault. It's those, it's those. But this is enough. We need to do something better. And this is what the opportunities that are right there. That we can engage in changing communities, even nations, one serving leader at a time. And that's what we continue to see. Now, that's the governor that said that word. And then this one here is Christy Harrison, is a missionary appointed by EMM and Mennonite Mission Network, working in Chad. And this is a very sad story, by the way. This hospital is in crisis of leadership. So she's working in a maternity unit of the hospital. And most of the people that they're working with have quit. Almost all the Westerners left. 7, 9 of them gone, including their only OBGYN. But now they're having babies are being born right now as I'm talking with you. The babies are being born at the gate. It's a crisis. So Christy reached out and we're training her and coaching her and how to continue to work with the leadership there so that they can make a difference in this community. Right now, it's gotten so bad that the hospital just hired armed guards so that these mothers cannot come in. You know what that is? It's terrible. We've been called to serve these communities. And leadership training is making a huge difference for them. At least they allowed her to hire 4 nurses. She needs to hire more to do the work. But more importantly, leadership. All right. This guy who's smiling, some people think is my brother. That's actually a chief. This chief attended the training. So this is the community impact. This area chief of Queenstown, huge area. He attended the training with his, the pastors invited him, and there were 2 bishops. There was a bishop, actually 2 bishops there, and others were invited to this training. So I saw him. We were talking about vision, and we asked people to write down the vision. And I just saw him sitting down. He didn't do anything. He was just holding himself. I'm like, what's going on? So I talked to him. And I wanted to find out what's going on. It's like, well, I'm a chief. I grew up in a long line of chiefs. Basically, he actually used these words. The original 12 tribes of Israel. that is how old his line of chiefs are in his community. I don't know. Well, can you write it down? No, I don't know. I don't know how to write it. So we talked more. The next day he came back and he said, I now have a vision for our community. And he wrote it down. That's wonderful. This guy has a lot of opportunity to change the life of his community. And yet, he didn't even have a clear vision where they were going. And where there is no vision, what happens? Perish. Exactly. So we're here helping these communities articulate a clear vision. Get clear about their vision, about their values, and about the mission so they can accomplish the mission that God has called them to do. All right, just a few more, and I will be finishing. That's a church, and then, so we are doing all kinds of different leadership levels of training. We have leadership from the church, leadership from the community, civil society, governments, and just right now, I wrote a letter yesterday to 2 governors in Kenya. We have set a date to meet with them, and we're going to talk with them. And our partner there, Professor Saroni, told me that if we can do the training in those 2 counties, the door just opens up. And the guy who's telling me this has been teaching leadership for 54 years. And he told me, I don't want to do anything else but serving leadership. And it's in our cohort right now that we're finishing with the international. So we're training right now 30 leaders that registered. At least we're hoping to certify in this training by January 15 of these leaders. So we have people from Tajikistan, and we have people from South Africa, we have people from Kenya, we have people from the Philippines, and they're all together, and we're training it virtually. So they do the work online, and we meet for 2 hours every month. And our hope is that by next year, these people will be ready and certified to do this training. So I don't have to be running around the world. Because you can't train 50,000 leaders by one person, right? So we're gonna see this multiply. Right now, this partner's already invited us, and I was in South Africa. That's the last trainings you saw here, and heading back to Kenya and Tanzania. We're going to be training not only church leaders, but community leaders, governors, some business leaders, and investing in their communities so that their world may thrive. And they can have this Genesis 1:31 pronouncement. It is very good. It is very good. That's our passion, that's our calling, that's our mission. And we're so grateful to have you be part of that. So thank you again for coming tonight and sharing in these stories of transformation, changing the world, one serving leader at a time. Thank you so much for coming.
So now I'm all that stands between you and dessert. And I'll keep it quick. But thank you, Nelson, very much. Appreciate that very much, those stories. I've heard those stories over the last few weeks, but I enjoy hearing them every time because they're really impactful. And that's what this is about. So just to summarize, what are we doing? Well, we started out with a little goal. The goal got a little vague, got a little out of hand. I'm used to that. $5 million in 5 years, all right? Train 50,000 serving leaders and 1,000 trainers. So 1,000 people who can train others. We believe that'll create an impact, a tidal wave that'll change this continent and begin to change this world. That's what this is all about. It's a little different than a lot of things. A lot of things you say, well, you know, hey, we do this, and then next year we have to do more, and then we have to build this, and then we have to do. No, this is to create something that will perpetuate itself forever. You know, even to the point where some of these trainers may be able to make a living out of this. This may be their new career, is to train others in serving leadership around the world. It's amazing. There's a window open right now that's never been open. The acceptance of the people in Africa to take responsibility for their own growth and their own leadership, the changes in the world, the use of digital equipment, and our ability to adapt to that is really driving all of this. So, what would we like from you? Well, we'd like a couple of things. Number one, we would like you to pray for us. This is hard work. It's exciting. We're all very motivated by it, but it is hard. I get nervous every time Nelson goes out of the country. I asked him for a detailed itinerary. I'm worried about where he's going. I've got State Department contacts in case something bad happens. Nelson doesn't worry about bad things happening, but I worry about those things, okay? That's my job. But so pray for us. Pray for our work to be successful. Pray for those that know us to be a part of this. If you're so inclined and you have the resources to help us, there's materials over here. We'll let you take those home. It's just a nice reminder of the story. We'd love to have your financial support too. That's not why you're here necessarily, but we wanted to tell this story. We want you to know because you're part of our community. You're part of the serving leadership community that we're creating. And you're as connected to these folks in Africa as we are. If you can help us, we'd love to have your help. But mostly just pray for us. Keep it plugged into us. Come back when we invite for dinner, a year or two from now so we can tell you the next set of great stories. And thank you again very much for being here tonight. We really enjoyed spending time with you. And it's not over yet, so have dessert, commune with us, enjoy us. If you don't have to rush off, you go. Have a great evening. Thank you.